This is Modern Mindset, the show where we pick the brains of the world's leading minds. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today we have Jonathan Royle, who is the bad boy of hypnosis. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me, Adam. Yeah, it's great to be here.
So, I mean, that's a very unusual introduction, the bad boy of hypnosis. But, you know, if someone was to Google you, that's probably the first thing that would come up. How did that name come about?
Well, it certainly didn't come about by choice. The long story cut short, when I first got involved in hypnosis, I was actually only 14 when I first trained to be a clinical hypnotherapist, and I blatantly lied about my age. I did this correspondence course, made out I was 18, did it, passed it. Once I'd passed it, I then did contact them and say, look, I really need to come clean here because I'm not 18, and they were a bit shocked, but after that, they ultimately turned around and said, well, you passed the exam, simple as that, so we'll let you remain a member. And there was nothing bad then, as it were. It's several years later when the brown and smelly hit the fan in British stage hypnosis, and I was doing stage hypnosis shows as well from the age of 15 in 1990. And basically, a lady died several hours after a stage hypnosis show in England, a lady called Sharon Taban. Now, the inquest and the coroner's report clearly stated it had nothing whatsoever to do with being hypnotised. Simple as that. There was no connection. But because it happened a few hours after a stage hypnosis show, it gave the media something to, is hypnosis dangerous? Did it kill this woman? Well, no, it didn't. And once that conclusion was reached, that made a tiny little paragraph on a hidden inside bottom corner of the page, whereas the story of woman dies after a stage hypnosis show made front page news and was all over the TV and radio and stuff. Now, perhaps fortunately, on the one hand, I jumped onto all that publicity because this was in at the end of 1992, so I was only 17. And I figured if I jumped on that publicity bandwagon, I could get myself known very rapidly. The downside was I did get known very rapidly back then in the stage name of Alex Leroy, but the media, because it was coming from the agenda of hypnosis is dangerous or bad, took things I did in my kind of carry-on film style humour acts that were very much double meaning, on double entendres, that if you see them visibly weren't particularly rude, but could be interpreted by the adults as a bit, oh, that's a bit naughty, but kids could have probably watched it and it'd have looked innocent. But when you write it down in a sensationalised manner for a newspaper, suddenly this woman who's made to believe I'm their favourite film star, and every time I click my fingers, they're falling more madly, passionately, deeply in love with me. And so they're putting their arms around me and stuff, gets written up in the newspaper as evil stage Svengali makes women believe he's their film star to get them into bed. He has them gyrating on him on stage, and it sounds as though they're getting the clothes off and things that never happened. And that suddenly then led to all the other people, especially the ones that weren't getting publicity at the time, to ultimately holding me up as the hate figure to detract from themselves. And that's where I kind of got branded by the other stage hypnotists who were jealous of the publicity I was getting, and the fact I was still getting work when a lot of people were becoming out of work at the time. They were attacking me. And also the hypnotherapist, because I was suddenly being branded as the controversial, one newspaper said I was the most pornographic stage hypnotist in England, which is hilarious because at the time the only element of nudity in the show was that some men perhaps took their shirt off at the end pretending to be male models. But the way they wrote it up, it was really, really bad. And that's how the British Bad Boy of Hypnosis thing came in, because I quickly realised that now I was branded that way, accidentally, that in order to actually carry on getting work, I needed to offer what people were then demanding, which was this adults-only mucky stage hypnosis show, which it then did morph into.
Mm. So in a way, you were a victim of a self-fulfilling prophecy, an accidental label given to you by the media, then became your calling card in many ways.
Well, it had to, because at the time, places weren't booking hypnotists because it's dangerous. People can die hours afterwards, apparently, which they couldn't. But there was a time gap before the coroner's report came out in 1994. And then there was another time gap law until 1996, when the Home Office did an investigation and declared stage hypnosis safe. During those couple of years, a lot of stage hypnotists went out of business in England because, frankly, they didn't know how to promote themselves. Now, I knew how to promote myself from my background in show business, being born on the circus and stuff, but I didn't purposely set out to become branded as the British Bad Boy of Hypnosis. That part, to be honest, happened accidentally.
Accidentally. And in terms of some of the perceptions, as you know, I'm a hypnotherapist, and one of the key concerns, the key worries that someone would have is that they could lose control under hypnosis. You've got a very different take than most hypnotherapists on that. Do you feel that people can lose control to the will of the hypnotist, or is that, kind of Hollywood make-believe?
Short answer, yes, they can, if the hypnotist knows what they're doing. The sad fact is that 99% probably of so-called clinical hypnotherapists out there, sorry if you're watching and you're offended, but basically if you're offended by this comment, it will be because you are one of those people. In other words, if you're a hypnotherapist who thinks that you cannot make people do things that would contradict their morals or their values, if you are a hypnotherapist who believes it is not possible to turn somebody into a mind-controlled assassin, if you are a hypnotherapist who believes it is not possible to hypnotize somebody without them knowing and without them remembering it happening, then you have not been taught correctly. Because you definitely can do those things. I've done all those things, many of which in most circumstances would be considered illegal. I've done them in controlled test conditions for media companies around the world, getting people to reveal their confidential computer passwords, banking PIN codes, other confidential stuff, getting them to do things that under any other circumstance would be deemed illegal. I've been an advisor, my DVDs that I sell worldwide and books, pretty much all of them have been bought by a company called Objective Productions, which made all of Darren Brown's output until recently, before he set up his own production company. And his advisors have bought all my DVDs, and some of my stuff has definitely been used in Darren Brown shows, and lots of it has definitely been used in Objective television production shows. So I can tell you without a word of a doubt that when you watch Darren Brown assassin, somebody becoming a mind-controlled slave, it can be done. Not only can it be done, it has been done. Sirhan, who killed Kennedy, allegedly assassinated him. Well, it wasn't his bullet that assassinated Kennedy anyway, if you do your research, but he was the fall guy for it. He's supposed to have assassinated him. Under questioning, at one point, he said, I honestly thought I was shooting at a rifle range. And he would have genuinely thought that, because one of the easiest ways to make somebody do something that would contradict their morals and their values is to reframe it in a manner where it fits in with their morals and values. So, Delavar, a guy called Gordon Mee, but Delavar, or Delarue, as his family name was, because his parents and grandparents were hypnotists and mesmerists, in their very early books that predate the war, they explained that if you took somebody and made them think that somebody dressed a certain manner, who was going to be in a certain location on a certain date at a certain time, was the big bad chief Red Indian, and that individual you were hypnotizing, conditioning, brainwashing, call it what you will, thought they were, say, 6 years old, playing cowboys and Indians, and that when they saw that individual, they'd be able to reach in their pocket and they'd conveniently find a cat gun, and they'd fire it numerous times at the Indian to win this game of cowboys and Indians. It would fit and be within their morals and values in their psychological state as a 6-year-old. And then when they got the post-hypnotic trigger of conveniently being geared to be in that area at that time, they'd see the person, Post-hypnotic goes off, 6 years old, gun, bang, 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 total amnesia because you programmed that in. Yes, it's happened. Yes, it's done. And yes, it can be done. So, you know, when hypnotherapists tell clients that they can't be made to do things, it's not like that. They either A, haven't been taught properly and don't know what they're talking about, probably because the person who taught them wasn't taught, and that's the trouble. Most of the people running training courses in hypnotherapy haven't really done anything of note in the real world, or the person teaching them didn't teach them because they thought it's safer not to. So I'm not saying they're necessarily blatantly lying by saying that it's not possible. They may genuinely believe that to be the case because the person who taught them either didn't know themselves or did know but thought, well, there's no need for them to know how to do that.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because when you apply it to different practitioners, a surgeon has got the tools and the ability to murder every patient that they have in front of them. But that doesn't mean they do. Does that make sense? You know, so even if hypnosis has got the ability to convince someone to do something unethical, immoral, against their values, the way I see it is that hypnotherapist is there to serve their client. And if they did do something against that, well, they wouldn't be a particularly good hypnotherapist and they probably would get a bad reputation and not work with clients. So in many ways, the biggest fear of losing control isn't really the biggest fear. The biggest fear is that you're working with a hypnotherapist that either isn't very competent or isn't very ethical.
No, ironically, I would say that when I teach people, and I have a thing called the Elite Hypnosis Bootcamp, and that's not a blatant, well, it is a blatant now, but the way it differs from other training is that I come from this position of you can make people do things against their will. There are ways of doing that. And I teach how to do that because if you can take the techniques that used correctly by nefarious individuals, like, for example, the CIA wanting to assassinate Kennedy, have used successfully and still use to murder people or to turn them into mind-controlled sex slaves, to blackmail people, or a whole bunch of other things. If you use those techniques, imagine how much easier it is to use those techniques to get somebody off cocaine than it is to get them to murder somebody. Way easier. So I teach these techniques as part of what I teach. I mean, at the basic bottom line core, it's taking the extremes of pain and pleasure, or the extremes of fear and laughter, or the extremes of it's fear and pain on one end, on the other end, laughter and pleasure, but taken to the total extremes. You know, there was a thing called MK Ultra that people think it was fully the CIA that ran these mind control experiments. It wasn't just the CIA. It was also linked in England with a thing called the Tavistock. At the time, it was called the Tavistock Hospital, Tavistock Clinic. It's now the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, and it seems a very squeaky clean organisation that's about how to kind of socially engineer the general public, but for good purposes, apparently. The truth is, when you dig deep, they were linked in with MK Ultra, Mind Control Ultra, the experiments that involved using drugs, extreme trauma and physical torture of people, and sexual abuse of people as well, to work out the best ways to hypnotize, traumatize, brainwash people to do anything and everything. And whilst the conventional paper trail shows MK Ultra was shut years ago, there were so many offshoots, Project Bluebird, MK this, MK that. They're still doing things. And the interesting fact is that now the Tavistock Institute that was involved in those experiments has morphed into the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. Looks all very innocent, but they share the same office in central London on a back street as the British Psychological Society, whose main aim with psychiatrists is to drug people. They're there, their underlying thing is to drug people, not to get them better. It's all part of the mass conspiracy. and they're in the exact same building because they're both interlinked. More interesting than that, and anyone can check this out, don't take my word for it, is that the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations also have advised in various things such as Cambridge Analytica. Now, the mainstream media, on Netflix, there's a film called The Great Data Hack. That only scrapes the surface. A friend of mine called Neil Saunders has a book out on Cambridge Analytica. If you search for that, and it goes way beyond what they put in The Great Data Hack. And when you look at it, it all links back to Tavistock Institute, MK Ultra, and the world plan to ultimately brainwash, emotionally manipulate, and mind control the world to do what the ultimate money people, the banksters, as some people dub them, want people to do. And they have total control, the banksters, of what goes out in the media, which is the biggest brainwashing hypnosis tool on the planet. As we're seeing right now in March 2020 with the whole hysteria over this COVID-19 coronavirus. It's been made worse by media. There's an old saying in the print media, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's the industry inside, a crass way of saying, if you've got a tragedy, a death, a murder, a pandemic, front pages, big spreads inside because it sells newspaper. Fear sells. Tragedy sells better than good news. But the real irony here is that when people take on board fear, whether it's through reading it in newspapers or magazines, hearing it on the radio, seeing it on TV, or a combination thereof, it sets off the fight, flight, and freeze response in the human body, which produces more cortisol and other chemicals that we have no particular use for at the time. But what they do, because they're not getting used, is it weakens your immune system. That's a medical provable fact, not a conspiracy. Check it out. So by reporting on these things in the sensationalized manner they are doing, they're actually making, potentially, more of the population's immune systems lower, and therefore making them more likely to get the coronavirus, or if they get it, making it more likely they may get it at a worse level than they would have done if they handled the delivery of the news in a more, look, if you handle this right, you'll be okay kind of manner, rather than people will die.
Yeah, it's very sensationalized. And I was curious to kind of get your take on, you know, we've never seen this level of, you know, whether you call it compliance, coercion, influence, you know, whatever term you use, it's basically changing people's behavior on a level never seen before. As a stage hypnotist, you probably have a different perspective on this than most. Do you see psychological principles being used at a government level, at a media level, that is helping to have this kind of mass level of influence, you know, literally worldwide?
Let's not forget, when it comes to it, governments have got the ability to do what they call an edict, which means they can stop the media from printing things. And in certain circumstances, that has happened. Now, by the same token, that means they've got the powers to have stuff printed that they want. They have, simple as. That's not a conspiracy. I've worked on the inside. Governments can tell newspapers what to print. And it's more than that. It's certainly a symbiotic relationship. That is why when you look at Boris, one of his advisors was Michael Gove. Gove used to be on Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul's payroll. If we go back in time to when David Cameron was Prime Minister, he actually brought in Andy Coulson, who got fired from Murdoch, apparently, because of his involvement in illegal phone hacking. My point is that the media and whoever's in power at the time, the media control them and therefore give them some favours back. Murdoch has backed every winning Prime Minister in decades and decades. By what he puts out in his propaganda papers, he can turn people against the candidate who'd actually be better for society and make them hate that person so they vote for somebody else and he gets the person he wants. And then they owe him favours. But now and again, he'll give them favours. So be under no illusions that the media are part of this, and vice versa. Yes, there's a key thing here. How, as a group, people react with, I hate to use the word herd, because herd mentality is what I was going to say, but Boris recently used this, we're going to use the herd way of, exposing
Herd
people
immunity,
to,
I think
yes,
the phrase was.
loads of old people are going to die as a result. And the
Yeah.
other day, Dominic Cummings was exposed as not giving a shit, excuse the language. And, Dominic Cummings pulls the strings on Donald Trump as well. Do your own research, he does. There's a very small number of people control this world. They control the narrative through the media around the world. And as a group, people react differently than they do as a single individual. And this is why this is happening to us all.
Yeah. Would you say fear is one of the key tools that is being used to kind of influence people right now in the wake of Corona?
They're trying to. It's not working as well as they wanted it to. Clearly influenced by shown by the fact that yesterday, which was Sunday, 22nd of March, a load of people were disappearing off to the seaside, and the seasides were crowded, and they weren't practicing the social distancing of being at least, 3 meters, 6 foot apart type of thing where possible. So there's an element of people that, but there again, some of these people, I would swear at this point, but I won't. I'll just put a bleep in there. Imagine what I might have said. Starts with F. It's got a couple of letters in the middle. Then there's a K, and then the word wits. They're bleep wits. A lot of these people who logic doesn't go into that. These are the kinds of people who, would set fire to the desk in school just for a laugh. These are the kinds of people who don't get anywhere in life. There's a lot of people like that who sadly, because they become the alpha male, and they might not be a male, they could be a female, but because they've taken on that alpha role in their family unit, the other people who've actually got slightly more intelligence will do what the F-wit tells them to do. And if that F-wit is saying, let's go to the seaside and potentially infect a lot of people and come back and kill your granny by passing on the virus, then the others will follow suit because they follow their alpha leader. If they were away from that F-wit, the chances are they would follow the majority of the pack, because we're pack animals, and would likely stay in, or at least distance as they'd been advised, and listen to the authority figure. But in their little world at that time, certainly yesterday, a lot of people who went to the seaside, their authority figure was the F-wit alpha person in their social circle. Mm. Some people are wired up that way. The majority of people, because there's always going to be the odd ones out, but the majority of people will, whether they like the political leader or not, perceive them to be the authority figure. But that's why we're going to have lockdown in the UK involving the police and army enforcing this. It's going to happen, if not tonight at 7 o'clock when he does his next thing. By the middle of this week, it'll be in because of the F-wits over here. However, he wasn't strong enough with the message. The media didn't push it as much as they could have done, to the level of fear they could have done. And I think that was on purpose. So there would be some F-wits over here that wouldn't do what the majority were doing, being sensible, so that it would give Boris the ability to go, I tried to do this without locking you all down. What a nice person I am. But unfortunately, these F-wits over here, they now become the enemy, not the state.
They've spoiled it for everyone else, basically.
Yes. So I've got to now bring in these measures. Don't blame me. If these idiots had listened, you wouldn't all be on lockdown. The truth is, we would have been looking at the rest of the world sooner or later, but he's very cleverly been advised by the likes of probably Dominic Cummings, probably by advisors who do work for the likes of the Tavistock Institute, that look at how people, they've now got most of the general public going on social media. Look, people putting up photographs, shaming people, going, why did you go to the seaside? They've now got the majority of the mass populace begging to be locked down for at least a couple of weeks, on a proper lockdown where they're only allowed out to walk the dog or to go and get food, that will be enforced. But they've got the mass populace, the majority of it, asking for a police state to enforce this. They were always going to do that anyway, but rather than doing it straight away and everyone going, oh, police state, what's going on? They brought in, or are just about to rubber stamp, the coronavirus bill that gives them the right to detain people who are not abiding by it. Amongst that are new mental health measures. You used to have 3 people, doctors and psychiatrists, to section somebody. 3 had to agree. Now it's 1 if it's coronavirus related. 1 is how it's been altered to. Taking away freedoms, eh? Freedoms that initially are being brought in for 2 years. Removal of freedoms that are being brought in for 2 years under the coronavirus bill. Why didn't they bring it in for like 6 months with a loop, and a section there to review it after 6 months that meant if it was still needed then, automatically it could carry on? Why is it 2 years straight away? Could it be that, I'm not saying that this is a manufactured virus like some conspiracy tinfoil hat brigade people are saying out there. I'm not saying that, although it could be. It could have been a biological weapon that accidentally has gone wrong. But I think it's more likely just something that has mutated from the wet markets of Wuhan. But the powers that be are taking advantage of this. You see, whenever there's something negative, they will try and take advantage and make it turn out best for them. For years, they've wanted a one world currency. For years, they've wanted to abolish money and make it all just digital. So that, like they do in China, there's a reward system where if you've done something bad, you get sanctioned and you can't access all of your money. It's a punishment. They want to make this worldwide. Well, guess what we've been seeing. Use contactless payments, use cards, handling money could spread the coronavirus. I'm not saying this was done for that purpose. I'm saying, Lord, that the powers that be are jumping on this and amplifying the things to their advantage so that when we come out of the other side of this, people are going to be so used to using contactless or card payment rather than money that money will probably get abolished very, very rapidly. Our freedoms will have already been taken away because they're not suddenly going to revoke the coronavirus bill for at least 2 years. That's in place. What else can be brought in? Already Boris has got in place the ability that, the moment he got in, he brought in things to alter the Fixed Terms Parliament Act. All of these things are a little bit separately. They're on their own, are fine and fairly innocent. But when you put them all together, it's about control.
It seems that way. And one of the things that, obviously, when people think about mind control and think of hypnosis, a lot of the time Hollywood movies spring to mind, and that might be movies like Trance, movies like I don't know if you've seen Old Boy, for example. There's certain it's a great movie, but at the end there's kind of like a post-hypnotic suggestion. Quite a clever movie.
Actually, I think I might have done now you mentioned that.
Yeah, Korean film. What would you say is, of the sensationalist perspectives, the Hollywood version of hypnosis, what would people be surprised that there's actually an element of truth there, and what is completely nonsense?
This is the bit that most hypnotherapists out there are going to go, he's talking through his backside. They're going to accuse me of. Well, let me just say, if I'm talking through my backside, why have I, for the past over 30 years now, travelled the world using the exact techniques that you don't think are possible in experiments with the media and for other organisations that, for various reasons, have to remain nameless, although they are alluded to in my documentary, Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis. The general public at large and hypnotherapists watching this, my view is this: Hollywood does not even come close to what is possible with hypnosis. Because as I said before, yes, you can create mind-controlled assassins. Yes, you can create mind-controlled sex slaves. Yes, you can create spies that will go into a scenario, remember everything, but then totally forget they know it, so that if they were interrogated, they would never give it up because they don't know they know it, because it's been compartmentalized through trauma-based mind control combined with hypnosis. But trauma-based mind control doesn't necessarily have to be physical trauma. It can be psychological trauma, where under hypnosis you lead the person to believe they're being physically tortured. So the hypnosis can be used to make them believe they're being physically tortured, to create the trauma required to splinter the parts of the brain, to create compartmentalization, to create the multiple personalities. Psychiatry is referred to as multiple personality disorder. But this can be induced on purpose for nefarious means. So, you know, Hollywood doesn't even get close to it, to what is possible. Hollywood is involved in it, in fact. You know, Hollywood, quite often, I'll give you an example, Transformers, the film, there's lots of military vehicles in it. And if they were to have hired all those military vehicles individually for the film, it would have added massive more millions onto the budget. But there's a section of the military in America that will give, at next to no cost, military vehicles for use in films on condition that they get to approve the script. And if they want to, they can alter parts of the script so it puts the military in a good light to brainwash the public. It's a good idea to listen to the military, that it's a good idea to join the military and effectively commit suicide, potentially, because you're just a pawn for them. They couldn't care less about you, really. If you don't agree to have your script altered or checked, then they will not hire you stuff at any price, and they have to get lookalike vehicles, and it costs a whole bunch more money. So it goes hand in hand. Hollywood is part of the brainwashing hypnosis process.
And what's the thing that is in Hollywood but is just completely nonsense?
The thing that's nonsense is this is ridiculous, and I'm not being glib about this. It truly is this scary. When you start to do the research, the only bit about Hollywood that is nonsense is the idea that it's something innocent and it's just about entertaining people. The other thing that's ridiculous is the idea that the casting couch no longer exists. Hollywood is based on another area of the world with a similar name that was used in satanic rituals and the occult. There's a much bigger background to that. I'm not going to go into it because it's a bit funky-dory, but it is mentioned in... there's numerous books out there, you know. If you're a good one to look at is anything by a guy called McKay. I've just had a mental block on his first name, and I won't mind. I've got all these books. Just let me... McKay. He is called... Oh, no, I'm not sure off the top of my head. He is mentioned on the Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis page of my website, magicalguru.com. There's a guy mentioned there. Name escapes me at the minute, but anyway, get his books. Also, David Icke's The Biggest Secret from 1990. In there, it tells you the background of Hollywood. It's a front for, effectively, sexual satanic abuse. They get blackmail, compromise material on people. They get people addicted to drugs. People hear this, oh, they've sold their soul to the devil to get, well, Hollywood at its core, it's not a joke. You become successful or remain successful in Hollywood, the chances are you end up involved in or surrounded by drugs, sex of a non-healthy, often non-legal manner. You know, we've seen, which reminds me, Harvey Weinstein, got jailed recently for casting couch type sexual abuse. And apparently he's come down with the coronavirus. He's had to be taken to hospital. What a convenient way to smuggle him off. He'll probably die, allegedly, in the same way that, what Jim calls it?
Epstein.
Epstein, the same way that Epstein died, allegedly. No, he's gone somewhere. He's got too much stuff on people. It's all about blackmail, sexual abuse, and power and control. The people at the top with the money, the only way they can control other people with money, because money isn't the thing. They both got wonderful lawyers. So the only way the people at the top of the tree, or lower down sometimes, can get themselves protection against the people above is to blackmail them. And so they will set up situations where they drug somebody, and while they're drugged, make them have an encounter with an underage girl or boy that's filmed that looks as though the person was consenting within it, taking part, whereas in fact the person was drugged and had no choice but to take part. But then they're shown the video back and it's, no one's going to believe the fact you were drugged. This is proof that you're a paedophile.
And then at that point,
and that's used to blackmail them, and then
manipulation.
Power can be pulled.
Yeah, you've referred a couple of times to your documentary. Give us an idea of what that documentary covers and where it's available.
Okay, it's called Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis. It's subtitled, It's Time for the Sleepwalking Zombies to Wake Up. In terms of getting it, it's available on Amazon Video on Demand, Vimeo on Demand, and other platforms. All of the links are on. If you just go to magicalguru.com, there's a button that says Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis. There's also a series of free sort of taster videos there, giving a taste of what it's about. But what I cover in that, and there's not just me, there's also a guy called Dr. Robin Kelly, a medical GP, who's also an expert on the dangers of 5G technology. There's Neil Saunders, an expert on mind control. There's Gareth Icke, the son of David Icke, who gives us insight to the music industry and the corruption and stuff that goes on in that. The subjects covered our religion, politics, the banking system, the education system, religion, I've said that, finance, basically every area of normal everyday life. We look at what appears like normal, innocent, everyday actions and explain, illustrate, and give evidence and proof of how it's all done on purpose to manipulate, brainwash and control people. They want the general public to be in debt, for example, banks. Of course, they want you to be in debt because then you're always at the back of your mind worried about how you're going to pay the bills. And while you're worried about how you're going to pay the bills, you can't focus fully on achieving the best possible things for you in life. You are more likely to be compliant to the authority figure, your boss, or the government, what they say, because you're in fear of losing your job, not being able to pay the bills, losing your home. And that's where they want people in a constant state of disorientation and confusion. Everything's geared up. Politics is the illusion of choice. It doesn't matter who you vote for, because at the end of the day, the people above them with more power tell them what to do. And if the politician doesn't do it, they'll blackmail them by getting something on them to make it happen. So this voting nonsense, it's an illusion of choice. If voting did anything, they wouldn't let us do it. It's so that people think they've got a choice and so that they argue with each other, which is even easier to do with social media these days. It's about getting people to argue against each other, because while they're arguing against each other, people don't unite together.
Divide and conquer, isn't it?
Divide and conquer, exactly. And that is exactly what they're doing from all areas of life.
I think you've got some real insight there. And I think, a few people might be scared at this idea of hypnosis being so powerful that you can make people do things against their will. Is there anything that you would end the interview on with something, let's say, inspirational or positive around hypnosis?
Okay. Let's start with a worst mental image, perhaps. Every human being on this planet, from cradle to grave, is psychologically and emotionally manipulated to some degree successfully by the powers that be. But on a lower level, we're psychologically, emotionally manipulated by those around us, our friends and family. You know, when our son or daughter wants something and mum says no, and they come to daddy with the puppy dog eyes, oh, please, we're being emotionally manipulated. That's a low-level example. But the powers that be do it on a massive scale. The greatest hypnotist of all, one of the greatest hypnotists was Adolf Hitler. He hypnotized a nation into doing atrocities and murdering millions of innocent people. That is how powerful it can be when used for negative purposes. Positively low, this exact same technique, just as a hammer can put nails in the wall and pull them out, but can hit someone on the head and kill them. The same techniques can be used to help people overcome habits, addictions, fears, phobias, give them more confidence in life, more sense of self-worth. And when it's used in that manner, so don't be scared of it, when it's used in that manner, whether through self-hypnosis on yourself or going to see a professional therapist like Adam, and the key there, my key piece of advice is look out for video testimonials from past clients that therapist has helped. Written ones could have just been made up. Look out for video testimonials, check them out, make sure they're real. If the person's got good video testimonials and have helped other people with what you want help with, then you can feel safe going to that person, okay? The fact is this, there's 3 things you can do to protect yourself to a degree. Number 1, whilst you can be hypnotized against your will, certainly if fear is used, as it often is by the governments and stuff, you are a lot harder to manipulate if you consciously say in your head, you're not going to hypnotize me. Certainly if you say that during a stage hypnosis or during a hypnotherapy session, it's not going to have any real positive effect on you. In the bigger world, don't read newspapers. Don't listen to the radio. Don't watch TV news. Wait until it's been on and then go and research on the internet from a few different resources. A mainstream media resource, but then when you see one of them that's perhaps more left-leaning, also find a right-wing mainstream media resource, see what they're saying, and then find an alternative news media. And between the 3, you'll get a more accurate picture of what is true, because it's the bits that come across from all of them that's the element of truth, whereas they all have their own separate agenda to bend it differently. So you've got to question everything, basically. Don't take anything as read. Number 3, don't believe authority figures without getting independent evidence first. Like I always say to people who are thinking about learning hypnosis, there's people out there with wonderful websites, and oh yeah, they're accredited by this wonderful organisation. It means naff all, because there's no such thing as these accredited organisations. If you agree to train people for the number of hours they say, and you pay them a yearly fee to be a member, will allow you to say you're approved by them. The truth is, what people should be doing is questioning what success rate has that person, in this example, got of teaching other people to become successful in that industry or that skill set. But seeking out evidence, questioning what has that teacher actually done in the real world, because so many people in our industry of hypnosis and NLP, they do a course, then they do another, then they do want to learn how to teach it to other people, and they realise they can make money teaching other people easier than doing it in the real world, and they've never done anything in the real world. And that applies to a lot of industries out there. Those who can do, those who can't teach. But there are a few people out there who are teaching, who are actively doing it in the real world, and you need to seek those out. So don't believe immediately an authority figure. Don't believe things. You know, they say a photograph never lies. Well, guess what? Don't automatically believe the truth of a photo. An innocent photo of someone just saying good night outside a restaurant, they're just friends, they've gone after filming a TV show, say, and it was a split-second kiss on the cheek. From the angle of across the road, the long lens from the paparazzi, at the right angle, it looks as though, you can't see it's on the cheek, it looks as though they're kissing full on the lips. Yet from this side, from the restaurant, completely innocent. But the photo the newspaper will put in with the headline is to give the impression that they're snogging. Photos can lie. the media do lie. In fact, the majority of what you read in the newspaper is either lies, fabricated, made up, and that's why we need what Leveson Inquiry Part 2 to take place, because Part 1 started to uncover the corruption of the police and media and governments working together in a corrupt manner, an illegal manner. But Part 1 definitely uncovered the fact of how much nonsense is published by the newspapers that's passed off as being real news. Really, it's just propaganda, just like it was in the days of Hitler. So the best thing you can do to protect yourself is don't believe the nonsense in newspapers or on the news. Remember, they're getting paid behind the scenes by people who have an agenda, who ultimately go up the tree to the banksters, and this is all what we expose in Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I think once you know some of the tricks that can be used, then it's almost like a vaccine. It kind of protects you from the same kind of things being used against you, because you see it from the inside. So I think that's really valuable information there. And that website again was Magical Guru.
MAGICALGURU.com, magicalguru.com. There's a link on there, Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, where all the info about the documentary and the book that accompanies it is there. There's also a section with some free stuff where people can get some free books on hypnosis, and I explain more on how it is possible to use it negatively, but also how to use it positively for yourself, more important.
Jonathan Royle, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Adam. It's been a pleasure.
And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset. See you again shortly. Thanks for that. I'm just going to stop the recording.
Cheers, dude.